Evening, everybody. Welcome to Zoom at 8. My name is Julianne Peterson, and I am your host tonight and every Tuesday night for Zoom at 8. We have been doing this successfully for over 4 years. We have been having a conversation with people in the room, whether it is just with networking or industry professionals like Sandhya, who's going to be joining us tonight. And we have closed a lot of deals, whether it's been from Zoom at 8 or as Old Capital. We've closed, being with Old Capital, over 6,000 loans. It's a lot of loans. So if you are working on a deal or you're trying to underwrite deals, I'd like to have the opportunity to help you. You know, that's what we do. We are specialists in multifamily. While we'll look at other types of asset classes, we are specialists in multifamily. We'll look at your T12, your rent roll, the OM, if it's available. That's your offering memorandum, and your syndication deal analyzer or your underwriting modeling tool, and we'll get you a quote. I want to welcome again everybody to tonight's Zoom at 8. We do this every Tuesday night. We are here to create relationships, and we couldn't do it without people like Sandhya. She's been here before, and I wanted to have her back because she is creating wealth while building communities. And it really is about relationships. So Sandhya Seshadri is an apartment syndicator, underwriter, and hands-on asset manager. Sandhya is a Dallas resident with an immigrant mindset of extreme gratitude for this country and especially the Lone Star State. She arrived in the 1980s with 2 suitcases in hand full of hopes and dreams. She attended SMU, studying electrical engineering, and went on to pursue her MBA, all while participating in multiple investor groups discussing and trading stocks. Knowing 90% of millionaires own real estate, she passed on the hassles associated with the 4 T's of single-family ownerships: tenants, toilets, trash, and termites. She then took, without any hassle, she decided to take a weekend seminar that led her to her current passion, which is serving residents and building wealth for her investors by creating neighborly communities and impacting lives. So today, less than 4 years later, Sandhya owns 4,000 doors as a general partner in syndications and in passively investing. She successfully exceeded her corporate America's salary, all while having the flexibility of schedule. Her company, Engineered Capital, Sandhya helps engineer her investors' capital to create financial freedom through apartment investing. She has 2 children and is married, and again, lives in Dallas. So I am thrilled to have you back, Sandhya, and you've become such a great friend. I want to thank you so much for returning and sharing with us so much and sharing your life with so many people on LinkedIn. So welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much. I have looked up to Old Capital since the first day that I was wide-eyed and clueless as a syndicator. And it's like a life dream almost to be like invited by someone from Old Capital to speak at a meetup. And now it's the second time. So I'm so honored to be here and help answer any questions you have related to the whole 9 yards from scratch, start to finish of a syndication, the full cycle we just did. So we got a few stories to tell.
It has been so wonderful to watch you grow. So we did that previous deal that you just sold, and we'll hear a little bit about that tonight. But to watch you grow from the start of that to the end has been phenomenal. And that's why I wanted to have you back, because watching your LinkedIn posts, watching just having watching you in the conferences, seeing your interaction and seeing just the growth that that you're sharing on the assets that you're managing is phenomenal. And you're attracting so many people. I wanted to share you with our people here.
Thank you. I'm really honored.
Yeah. So there's three things that I want to go over today. I want to hear about asset management horror stories, because as we said earlier, asset management is overlooked on a lot of these education programs. People get into them and then they are on to the next deal. So I really want you to unpack asset management, some of the horror stories that you have encountered, okay? What to avoid, okay? I'd also like to have you talk to us about, as an LP and as a GP, either one, how you can save a deal. You don't have to be a GP. You can be an LP, that you have control. Yes, you're a passenger in the back as an LP, but you can take control. You can have impact. So I want you to kind of talk about that. And then lastly, I want you to talk about the things to watch before investing passively into a deal. Okay. We talked a little bit about capital raising, some of the things to be watching for. So that's a lot. Mm-hmm. You've got so much to share with us. And so I'm going to turn it over to you and have you unpack the horror stories first on asset management.
One of the biggest interesting things that happened to us on this asset, for which you were our lender, and we sold it after 27 months last Friday, March 31st. It's something you can't imagine. The inspector, who is also the fire marshal, etc., of the city, walks in, handcuffs and arrests our property manager and takes her to jail. And we have to go bail her. And then he says, next, I'm coming after the owners. And I'm the closest owner. You want to know why? There was a leak in the property. That was a sewer leak that went out to the parking lot from a couple of the units. And he said it was hazardous. The property manager immediately called plumbers. The plumbers said they fixed it. This was on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. Well, Friday, he drives around and he says it's still there. And he says, you didn't take me seriously. You didn't get it fixed. And that's what he did. So it's kind of unimaginable stuff, right? And so the biggest thing is to have presence of mind and see, what can I do right now to salvage the situation? And we were on a Zoom call with the city manager, et cetera, explaining that we tried our best. Here's the plumber's bill, and it wasn't cheap. And we've had a good relationship with him. This happened after, 22 months of being involved in this deal. And we had walked with him through CO, et cetera, like certificate of occupancy kind of thing. So just can't anticipate something, but it's good to always be well capitalized, because you never know when you're going to need the money. Okay, any kind of a deal, doesn't matter whether it's C, B, or A class, you got to be well capitalized. That's an example. Another thing that happened, well, Atmos Energy changed gas lines at the street level. They hadn't done this in 20 years. Well, when they have to turn it back on, before they turn gas back on at your property, they have to do a pressure test. The pressure testing failed at all of our buildings. It also failed at brand newly built, relatively newly built other buildings near us in the entire city, on the street, et cetera. So it wasn't unique to us. But what does that mean? You got to have plumbers working, day and night for 2 weeks in a row, to two at a time, to turn those valves and pressure test. And you're going to pay those bills. Because one, if residents don't have hot water, you're going to pay for them to stay in a hotel, because the property is not, is going to be condemned. It's not livable if you can't provide hot water. Second, our stoves were gas stoves, and you need electric. Otherwise, he said, you got to switch it to electric. That might be cheaper than paying for plumbers for an indefinite period of time. So what did we do? We said, well, you got microwaves, you got refrigerators. Let's get you pizza for tonight. Let's see how we can salvage the situation. Let's get the gas heater turned on first. So again, you got to be calm when there's a storm around you. And you got to say, what does it take? So it's just a matter of making your residents doing the right thing by them, right? If this happened to you, what would you want done? So look at it that way, but also manage the expectations with the city, show them you're doing it. And if an owner shows up and stays there, it always helps them see that you're doing it. And that's why I emphasize that even if you live remotely from your property, have someone who's boots on the ground, who's local to the property, who establishes a connection with the powers that be of your city and get it done. Those are some examples. Of course, we've had our share of storm damage where the roof is blown up, or you've had a fire in a unit. Luckily, no one died. That's the most important thing. Worry about people first, then pets, then everything else. So just got to be prepared. And across the board on all of these, the one thing that you always need is capital. So I'm going to be discussing a lot more such stories and what you can do to prevent them. If I could give a little plug for an upcoming conference in June, Multifamily Investor Nation Conference in June in Charlotte, June 12th and 13th. That's the topic I'll be talking about, is asset management horror stories, how to avoid them, how to deal with them when they happen to you. Because you couldn't have planned for something that hadn't happened in 20 years, like Atmos Energy changing gas lines, and therefore your pressure test failing across the board, no matter how old or new your buildings are.
So I want to go back about the property manager. So no one could have ever imagined having a property manager hauled off by a police officer, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she must have been devastated, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what does that cost you? That alone, bail, and then to have to fix that must have cost a ton of money. And the all of the other stuff, I mean, this thing costs you a lot of money to repair.
Yep, a lot of things cost you a lot of money to repair. And the most important thing is remember your priorities. My priority is first, take care of the PM, figure out what's going on. It looks like for a while, this PM and this inspector have not really gotten along well. There's been that clash of, let me show you who's the boss kind of attitude. And I think that's what the inspector was showing is, you are responsible for this. I gave you the notice that you need to fix this. It wasn't fixed and you didn't bother to verify it. So I'm going to arrest you, teach you a lesson kind of attitude. So it was very interesting. We replaced the PM, the property management company, moved her to another property for her safety. And we put another PM and that relationship has gone well. And, you know, it's all said and done. We're good. But that's an example of things you cannot plan for. But stay well capitalized. You'll never go wrong if you stay well capitalized.
Right. Yeah. Amazing. Now, you probably never thought that you were going to experience any of this when you got into multifamily, right?
Right.
Those are not in any handbooks,
Mm-mm.
right? And you never knew any of this. You learned a ton on the job training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like motherhood, you know, nobody gives you a manual. You just have to go with the flow and do the best you can with whatever situation life hands you.
Absolutely. Is there any other asset management horror stories that you would like to share with us that you have experienced?
I've experienced in a passive deal, but the main lesson learned is you have 3 or 4 main bosses. Listen and do whatever they say. The first one is your lender. If your lender has any required repairs and you don't complete them by the deadline, you're going to be in very big trouble. It could be parking lots are usually one thing they look for. So even when you look at deals, do the drive-by, drive that parking lot. If it's full of bumps and you see things to be repaired, you're going to do that. Anything that matters related to the safety of your residents, like a stairs, a railing, any kind of lead paint, those kind of things, electrical, all of that is going to always be very important. Your city in one city, like let's say it's Carrollton versus Garland versus Irving, the city inspectors are picky about different things when they do their inspections. You want to make sure your local PM or regional has a very good relationship with them. Ideally, you want them to already have managed properties within that city so that they know what to expect when a city inspector is going to come in for their inspection. that really helps. That's why every time I pick a property manager, people are like, why do you have different PMs across your different properties? Well, one thing is to spread my risk. What if one thing goes wrong with this PM company, right? They're all my half dozen properties. I would be scrambling to replace them. And the other thing is, I picked, like in Carrollton, I picked the company that was already managing the property right next door. But in Irving, again, my partners had another PM company managing two of their properties. So we went to the same company. So again, you can share resources across properties. If your maintenance guy is out or leaves for whatever reason, a lot of them were leaving at one point because of the higher salaries offered elsewhere. We could always borrow for a few hours, at least for emergencies. So I like it when a PM is already managing something close by.
That is a big deal. That is amazing. A lot of people do not, they don't do that. So great tip. I really like that. Let's go back to that, the property that you just sold.
Mhm.
We had agency financing on it.
Mhm.
So you assumed that loan. And at the time, there were not a lot of assumptions going on.
Mhm.
Today, there's a lot of assumptions going on.
Mhm.
You have gotten into other deals since that time.
Mhm.
Have you put bridge lending on any of your deals, and how have those gone? What have some of the challenges that you've experienced, and how have you voiced that to your investors? Because that is some of the challenges that general partners have, and I think you do a great job with it. So let's talk about that.
Well, a lot of the people I attract are data-driven people who can handle the direct conversations that I tend to do, which is the straight truth. I don't paint a rosy picture. If things are bad, I tell you it's bad. And the fact is that across my bridge loan deals, my mortgage has gone up by 30, 40, 50K as an example, right? So how do you deal with that? Well, that's taking money from your profits, what you should have given back to investors as a distribution. So yes, I've had to hold distributions. That's the reality of it. The thing we tell them is, look, until interest rates come down or we can refi from this loan, all the profits we were hoping to distribute to you is eaten up by this mortgage. So the most important first thing to look at is our lender agreement to make sure the net operating income exceeds the mortgage payment. DSCR, debt service coverage ratio, has to be 1 or higher. That's going to be our highest priority. However, we need to do that. My revenue has to go up. My expenses have to come down. So revenue minus operating expenses, which is my NOI, is my first priority. Beyond that, let's look at lender draws for all our CapEx. How much do we have runway left? Like in one deal, I have 200K left. Another deal, I have like 600K left, right? So I know in terms of spending every month on CapEx, I'm going to try to move as many things as possible as CapEx replacements below the line so that my operating expenses are reduced. Do I want to go on repairing an appliance and incurring more expense, or do I just want to replace it so I can call it a CapEx? So we're looking at strategies like that. We're also asking our PMs if they can pre-lease a unit at the market rent to only do a basic make ready, because this is a new resident. We don't know them. They are unknown to us. Why should I spend tens of thousands of dollars making that unit fancy? Now, if I have an existing resident and it's a renewal coming up, we like them, they pay on time, these are the people that we want to keep. We try to attract them to renew at the market rent by offering them a new appliance package or something else that'll make them happy. And then we take those old appliances and put it into the new leased unit. Once you've proven yourself to be the exact customer that I want, then I try to go the extra mile to be nice to you. So we're employing all kinds of little strategies like that to keep the expenses down, because the first goal on bridge loans is always make sure you read your terms closely. So go read your loan agreements very closely. Talk to your legal if you need more clarification. So they read the fine print. A nice consult with your legal might be worth it. And figure out what's your DSCR, what are the constraints, when do they take charge of your deal, what else is going on, right? And know when you're coming to that point and be very careful. One of the things more bridge lenders are doing is they're doing more visits now to see, did you really upgrade that unit like you said you would? You gave me this list of unit numbers. I funded that upgrade for you. Let me go walk that unit. So they'll ask even for specific units when they send their lenders for inspection. You want to have all your I's dotted and T's crossed for those lenders inspections, and you want to go almost, above and beyond for those lender inspections. They are your boss. Never forget that. 70 or 80% of your deal is funded by them.
Yeah, that has been a challenge. I mean, again, when you got into this, we were doing agency lending, and nobody was doing bridge lending, right? So that was a learning experience for you by fire, I'm sure, right? I mean, and nobody would have known that we would have gone up, increased these interest rates like they did, right? And we're saying, oh yeah, we'll put on a whatever 2-year, 3-year cap, and you're like, yeah, it's fine, no problem, whatever. Thank goodness we did, right?
We got 3-year caps on our deal, so I'm so blessed because I have a longer runway till 2024 when I have to exit it. So like the earliest one is July 2024, for which I still have a good 15 months. So by January, I can either list it for sale or refi. And by then, I'm hoping the interest rates won't increase. They'll at least stay flat, which means your spread will come down. So the new loan will be more attractive to a potential buyer.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about, you're doing all of these expense reductions, being really careful about that. How are you finding your rent increases? Are you finding them to be what you planned on? Are you seeing that those are not coming through for you? And I know we talked a little bit about holding on to your existing folks, your tenants, your residents. Kind of talk about that and how you're keeping them and some of the monthly scheduled events that you do.
So we focus a lot on retention. Our leasing staff, property management staff has a greater reward or incentive on renewals than new leases. So we target 60% or better for renewals. One of the things we like to do is the community activities. I think it's the PTA mom in me, but on a periodic basis, at least on a quarterly basis, like for Easter, we're having an Easter egg hunt. For Christmas, we had Santa in the property, pictures with Santa. I think at one property, we were able to do the free Thanksgiving turkey. Another one, we did free pies. We might just do a random breakfast on the go and give away, donuts and coffee or whatever. We've done things like, barbecue picnic, popsicles by the pool, just anything that sort of brings residents together. And we time it typically for the second week of the month. Like today's April 4th, you should have paid your rent by now or by the end of this week. So if we have an Easter egg hunt or some kind of an activity over this weekend or Friday, it's also a gentle reminder to say, hey, you kind of are behind on your rent payments. So we try to time it. Also, the first week is always the busiest time for your property staff. So the second week is less busy in terms of rent collections. And sometimes end of the month is also busy because they're trying to do those last few numbers so that your collection number is high or turn in financials, etc. So you want to kind of time it to when it's least busy for them. And you want to do things that the residents appreciate, because in some places, it's more of snacks and goodies more than anything else. One time for a national night out, we had the local neighborhood police officer visit so that everybody knows him before there's a problem and they get familiar with him. We had a fire truck there. Kids were so thrilled to be able to go all around a fire truck. And the point of all of this is that it's not expensive to do these things. These are simple, easy things. You just have to coordinate them. And then you give a budget. And that one was a bigger festival. So we actually did give away like a big screen TV and we had raffles and prizes and things like that. But sometimes, depending on your bridge deal and what targets you need to hit, here's what I tell people. Look at what you need as a minimum break even to sell. And same with refi. I need this much in proceeds from a refi for me to, at least pay off my existing loan and come ahead, right? So have those two break-even numbers always in the back of your mind. Underwrite your deal to figure out, I need to sell it at this price to at least get an acceptable return to my investors. It may not be as high as I initially imagined, but I need at least this much, right? So know those two numbers at all times and have them in front of your lender broker, like Julie, for example, and say, I need this much in proceeds, Julie, and every quarter at least I'm going to be sending you my financials. And same way for the listing broker, I need this much for a sale price, and here's my financials. So they know that, and they'll both send you targets. Like my listing broker sends me a target of, well, show me the upside, like do some upgrades, show me like $100 or $200 rent bump. And then, this is what I'm looking for. And same way my lender will say, well, it's great that your income has gone so much, but I need that net rental income up by another 5 or 10K, right? So when they gave me that target, what I said was, okay, if you're having a hard time pushing rent to that, push the rent, but offer them something else for free that comes under my other income category, like a free parking or a free Wi-Fi, so that my net rental income, which is what the lender cares about, is high. So you work around that. So you let the people who are in the business, who know what's needed, give you these targets, and you work towards those targets. So that's how I would rescue a bridge deal that needs a little help. But as far as renewals and stuff goes, like I said, we have not had a problem at our properties in popular locations in DFW. So Carrollton, Dallas, Irving, Garland. I haven't had a problem reaching pro forma rents yet. And I think that I might face it in the future on the smaller units, like a studio or a 1-bedroom. You might have hit the limit as families more stay together and move in with dad and mom, etc. You might want 2 bedrooms and 3s. You might be able to push it a lot more than your studios and 1. So just kind of watch that trend. And on a weekly basis, if you watch trends like that, you can adjust your pricing.
Yeah, makes sense.
An eye on the comps.
Now, did I hear you? You talk a lot, and I do want to make a plug. It's hard to see, maybe.
I see it.
Next Level, you guys. Sandhya is one of the authors in this book. She wrote a chapter in the book, Next Level. It talks about all the things that we're talking about. She talks about a community. Again, she came from India. She knows where she grew up. She may be growing up in a different type of community, but she knows what it's like, what she wants. Doesn't matter where she grew up. She knows what it feels like as a young child, what that feels like to be part of a community, what these children want. She calls it being part of a cul-de-sac, right? And I just love that. I thought that was amazing. Was there something that, and I can't remember if this was with Angels, when you spoke on Angels Summit, about garbage and being part of a community. Was that something that you said about making people responsible? If you are, like, hey, we're all taking care of our community.
That's right.
Here.
Please pick
Talk
up
about
trash
that.
after. Yeah, I think it's very important to me. Like if you are in a neighborhood, you're not just going to leave trash out as you walk. You're not just going to throw wrappers. You're not going to park your car and just take all the trash out from your McDonald's bag or something and just leave it there, right? So it's the same feeling, right? Look, we're a community. Look at us. We spent all this money to make the exteriors prettier. We've cared about your interiors. We service your work orders on time. Let's keep this place clean. But we have a very good property manager who catches everything on camera, and she'll go issue a lease violation. And they know that, then they'll be like, no, we didn't do that. Like, look, that's your son. I see his face. He did that. There's your $50. And they stop doing it. Once you're consistent and they know that they shouldn't do it. So we make that part of our newsletter, is keep the place clean. We appreciate you. This is what is going to help us all build a community. It's everyone's job, etc. And so I don't like to see trash. So I'll drive at random times. I'll be passing Carrollton on my way somewhere else, because I live within 30 minutes of all my properties. So even on a Saturday evening, if I see too much of partying, I'll be like, okay, are there beer bottles? What's going on here, kind of thing. And so I'll immediately text my property manager, who, is a friend now, kind of in that way. I build a good relationship with them. I'll take lunch to them, etc. So they'll tell me what the real problems are that they may otherwise be shy to explain in a group setting, in a call with several partners and everybody. So that's how I find out the real problems, and I just quietly solve them. And, in one case, we were able to give our property manager a nice raise. And she said she doesn't need a leasing staff at all. So I basically eliminated one extra person in the payroll, right? So you go figure out what they really want and what motivates each person. And that's different for each person. Like we had a maintenance appreciation day. And all we did was balloons and some donuts and free lunch, and just took pictures of them and said, we appreciate you.
Amazing.
It's
goes a long way. You're not very, the way you run this is just so different than most of our syndicators. A lot of them, like I say, you want to get into the deal and you're off to the races. I
Yeah.
love, because this is how I ran my business. It's my place. I own it. You're
Mhm.
going to call these people who live in your property. You're going
That's
to
right.
call them on it. And I absolutely love it. How are you managing taxes? Because as we know, taxes and insurance
Mhm.
in Texas is high. How are you? So in this case, again, you have to kind of pull from something else.
Mhm.
How are you managing that? Because that is expensive.
So we always protest our taxes. We use CMI in Dallas. In one case, we had to do a litigation, which we've never had to do before because it was outrageous. And so they were able to bring it down. So yes, taxes cost us more, mortgage cost us, and then insurance we had to shop around. It was really sad. We had a really good company taking care of us before, but we had to go shop around to get a better rate. And we ended up with a different company. So you should always be shopping around. Another thing is we thought one particular property only had a couple of buildings in the floodplain, but they actually said there were so many other buildings, and so our insurance was higher. We actually consulted this company because of going to a conference. People ask me, why do I go to a conference? And there's all these vendors that you'd never have thought. This was at I am in Dallas. I found this vendor who actually goes and talks to FEMA and stuff and actually says, okay, this building shouldn't be in the floodplain, and this is it. So they reduced that for us, and they got that spot and proven for us. So then our coverage for floodplain reduced, and therefore our insurance overall reduced. So you got to do all this creative stuff. And that's why I say network, network, network. There's probably somebody who's been through whatever problem you're facing now, and they'll help you.
Amazing. Amazing. Okay. Let's go on to the next thing. LPs, GPs. How do they save a deal? You're not a victim as a limited partner. Kind of walk us through that. Okay. GP may be struggling. What can an LP do? What can they kind of walk us through that?
Okay, so one of my first deals as an LP, I could see that the property's monthly financials, and you know I love my numbers, so I look at them and I could see them declining. The occupancy was declining. This was back in 2020. The deal was bought in 2019. Financials decreased, occupancy decreased, but CapEx spending was high. And I was like, this isn't right. This is COVID. You need to conserve your money. This isn't right what you're doing. And sure enough, the deal ended up in, they tried to do a capital call, change it to a member loan, etc. The problem was that means they want more money pumped into the deal. They didn't show me a clear path of how they're going to get out. Lucky for me and some of the other passive investors on this call was that my continuous nagging and closely reading financials showed us things like car payments, phone payments, etc., being charged of the sponsor, which I think is a no-no when the deal is not doing well and you've not made any distributions. And so we kept nagging the GPs more of us passives. And so we kind of were able to force that deal to be sold in early 2021. And thanks to the market doing really well, right? You had the best time for cap rate compression to happen. So if you sold a deal in early 2021, I mean, you got a great price for it. So we broke even and we ended up getting 10% back. So I'm very happy that happened, that you can be that one annoying voice and sponsors will at least make you go away by doing something. In this case, they actually sold the deal and saved all of us as passives because you could see that there was no way to really save the deal without a different strategy. And nobody from the sponsorship team lived where this property was located. So we were paying for car payments, cell phone, I don't know, whatever else. And, you know, when you're doing remote management of a distressed deal and your PM is just going to have a field day because they know you're never going to show up. So that was one example. Another example is that when I'm a GP and I see the financials declining and I need to make a change or I need to make a difference, I make sure everything I say is in email form, even though I talk to my GPs. I record documented saying, this is what's going on. This is what needs to happen. If not, this is where this train wreck is going to end up. And so we got to make this kind of a change or whatever I think is the change. But let's discuss all options. This is the idea I have right now, right? So you want to document that so that you can show that in case there's any litigation or problem later on, you have evidence to show that you wanted to try your best to make a change. You may be outvoted. Like if you have 4 or 5 GPs and you're only one of the 3 voices or 4 voices, and the others feel differently, or they're reluctant to let go of a PM, or whatever other change you might be suggesting is not very well received, you want to at least document what you do. The second thing is, a lot of my investors are your engineering data type. They read financials. They actually ask questions. One of my investors is actually on this call. I had a Zoom call for, I think, an hour with him and another very savvy financial planner kind of guy, not financial planner, actually, who does financial analysis in CRE. And they both like went through line by line of one of the deals they're both passive in. And then they came back saying, I think this is one of the more stronger deals. This deal is going to be fine. And that made me feel so much better. So one of the things I love to do is, if you love to geek out on spreadsheets, let's book another Zoom call. Let's go over it. And by the way, he's on the other side of the world. He lives 8,000 miles away from me, as an example of a savvy passive investor, right? I love that. So a similar such passive investor on a different deal also saw the declining financials and like, Sandhya, what are you doing? Why are you accepting this? I'm like, I am ready to do blah, 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 but I don't have a majority vote to make this happen. And so, things like that. Sometimes an LP can voice it. When an LP emails the GP team saying you need to do this, you better take it seriously, because after that, what's going to happen? They're going to take legal action because you ignored them when they said there's a problem. 6 months later, if you go under, or you go into a foreclosure or whatever other situations I'm hearing about now on a lot of bridge deals, it's like you didn't take care of your LP, even though there were warning signs. You didn't take care of the deal. So as an LP, you have more power than you realize. So voice it. If you're concerned, voice it, but be specific. Don't be emotional. Just say, I see declining occupancy. I see declining financials. I don't think you're able to pay the mortgage, whatever it is that you're seeing, right? And voice.
Now, do you give monthly updates, or do you give monthly financials?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And
Yeah.
then do you have a yearly meeting with like a webinar with your investors?
I did on some. On the other ones, the deal was doing fine and the GPs didn't want to do one. I've had small group Zoom calls. So, let's say we have 50 LPs and there's 6 of them who really want to dig into the numbers. I'll be like, all right, guys, let's all get together. It's a Saturday afternoon. This is what we're going to do. We love our spreadsheet kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yes, I've done an annual webinar is what I've done. Like, hey, this is our anniversary. Look how far we've come, kind of. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah. I'm having a Zoom call tomorrow on one of my deals, in fact, where I've invited all the LPs and let's discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
Not everything is perfect on these deals. And here's my strategy to make it better than where it is.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the good stuff, we're going to leave it alone.
I mean,
So it's full transparency. There's not going to be surprises. You're going to know well in advance if something's going wrong.
I think you hit it on the nail. It's not always, you can put everything in a spreadsheet and you can think this is exactly how it's going to be. Nothing goes perfectly, right?
Nope.
You can set it up and think it's going to go perfectly. Childbirth, we all thought was going to go perfectly. Never goes that way. Raising children never goes perfectly, right?
Yeah. Why? And when you're single and you don't have any kids, you're like, why is that kid so noisy? When you're a mom, you're like, oh, poor mom. Glad that's not my kid, right?
Yeah,
it's just perspective.
For sure. Okay, so let's go to our last one. And what are some of the things to watch before investing passively? What are some of the things that folks should be watching out, especially these days? We've got the whole debt issue. We've got we've got cap rates, right, that are no longer compressed. What is real? What's going to happen? Are we going to have the cap rates that are going to be the same when we exit? Are they going to be, 1.5 when we exit? What does it look like? What can you tell limited partners, passive investors?
The first thing is the track record of the sponsor. Most people love to brag about, I did this and I did that. Look, I changed the world and I did triple this and that. Well, give me a list of your deals. Very easy. Show me a list of all the deals you've done and give me a reference of a passive investor who can verify that you triple their money or whatever else you did. That's the easy part. So do that first. The second one is the market itself. You might be the greatest sponsor on earth, but if you're going to go invest in Midland, Odessa, I'm sorry. I wish you well, So pick markets very carefully, right? Job growth, population growth, diversity of jobs, high median household income, low poverty level, all the main check boxes. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go to Neil Bauer's location webinar. That and take notes. Plenty of notes.
Neil will be here, everybody, coming up in May.
Awesome.
So
yeah. So his location webinar and all his things are some of the best. So the sponsorship team and then the location. And then the third one is very easy to remember. When somebody gives you an analyzer spreadsheet and says, these are my assumptions, and here we go with my projections, make sure every number in that analyzer spreadsheet comes from a neutral third party. What do I mean by that? All the loan terms have to come from a lender. You can't speculate on what that's going to be. And if it's a bridge debt, you really don't know till the last day when you're closing or a few days prior what the proceeds will be or what the actual rate will be. So that's a big risk on a floating rate bridge debt kind of loan. Second, all the assumptions for rent bumps, other income sources, like, oh, I think everybody in the here is going to pay $50 for reserve parking because I'm going to paint a little stripe here. Okay, who's going to verify that, right? So other income, rental income, expenses, all of those numbers must come from the property management company that's going to run your property. So ask them for a budget, get that budget. That's what's going to get plugged into the spreadsheet, not your own assumptions. In Texas, you want to talk to a tax protest company, and they need to give you the tax estimates for that county. Johnson County is going to be much less than Tarrant County, as an example, right? So you need to know your county. So somebody who does a lot of business here in Dallas will give you those numbers. So you got to do the same thing. If you're in Phoenix or maybe in Atlanta, taxes don't matter at all. Insurance, get an insurance quote. See, talk about flood claims, loss claims in the recent years. Talk to an insurance broker and get a quote and plan for massive increases. And that way, if you're wrong, you know what? You'll be fine because something else could go wrong. So assume, a good 40, 50% increase in your rates. Mm-hmm. And those would be the most important things. The sponsorship team's track record verified by a passive investor. The market, has to check every box, don't compromise. And third, the analyzer from which your sponsor is giving out all these numbers. None of it is based on sponsor bias to make the deal work. It's based on inputs from neutral third parties. And then a second set of eyes. If a team has only one person as their underwriter and he or she is the best of the best, it's nice to have a second pair of eyes also verify that. So I'm being part of the Some Rock network. I have coaches. So 2 different unbiased coaches review my numbers. They challenge it because they also own thousands of doors in my market. And only then I take it out. So I have less risk when it's unbiased eyes looking at my numbers.
Oh my gosh. You are amazing. I mean,
Thank you.
The amount of information for everybody here is just overwhelming. You are amazing. So
I can slow down.
No, please don't. Let's open it up for any questions before we go to our networking. Anybody in the room? Please. All right, Kelsey, what do we got?
Well, once again, thank you, ladies, for hosting this event today. I am so excited to be a part of this session. I just want to thank you. Sandhya, you're always amazing. I always learn so much whenever you're on stage, and I just want to thank you so much for sharing your knowledge tonight. I just want to ask you, you talked about there are 3 bosses that you have. You have your lender, and I'm guessing the other is the inspector.
Yes, city.
Okay, and what is the third? Who is the third boss that you need to be concerned about when asset managing a property?
Investors. I answer to them. I report to them. If they didn't have money to invest in my deal, I wouldn't have a deal. Without them, there is no deal. And then the residents themselves through good customer service.
Okay, and my second question is for an aspiring multifamily syndicator like myself, who's looking to move forward and learn more about asset management, what do you suggest?
You can definitely talk to me more offline. I know I'm going to do something specifically focused on multifamily operations, but I would say that definitely read and learn from operators who fully run their deals. So podcasts more focused on asset management. I think Gary Lipsky also has a book on asset management, Best in Class. That's a good one to read. But I think asset management is so local also in the little nuances of what a city wants, et cetera. You want to be spending more time with operators running properties there, offer to help. If you can invest a little bit even passively with them or somehow find a way to connect more to them, that's a good way to learn. So when I was passive, mostly trying to get into my first deal, every time one of my passive deals, it was all in the local area. If those sponsors were doing something, I would offer to help. I would offer to volunteer. I would say, can I just be a second pair of eyes? Can I take pictures for you? What can I do for you? And so I would go every time. And, I was a full-time stay-at-home mom, just trading stocks. So once my kids were in school, I would do my little trades and I would show up to all the properties I could, because that's what I wanted to learn first. Is I wanted to learn, how do you make this business plan work? Does it really come true? This sounds like voodoo magic. I mean, they're saying they can get $200 by just doing this and that. I'm like, I don't believe it. So I had to go see it for myself. And the more I did that and spent time with the various vendors who showed up, like, you do water conservation, you actually reduce your water bill. You go and do LED upgrades. Okay, you're reducing your electricity bill, etc. So I had to learn all of that to practice. And so that's the way I would do it. As much hands-on is better. There's only so much you can listen to podcasts and books.
Fantastic. Great input. Candace.
First of all, I just say I'm so excited this is recorded, because unfortunately I was late. This has been phenomenal, just phenomenal. I just have to say it's so much information. It's just great. Thank you so much. You spoke about connecting up with property management from local areas, local properties. When you do connect with a property management company that you haven't worked with before, how often do you work with them? Is it weekly when you check in, just to make sure that you're all working smoothly with the same business plan without annoying them to make them want to quit?
You're talking about after you close and buy a property and you've hired this third-party PM, they're running the property for you. Oh, I have at least weekly calls at that time, minimum. Because it's so new, I have weekly calls. But in those first few weeks, it's very crucial to get on the right foot. And the first few days, especially, they don't have all their systems set up, etc. I actually take my laptop and I spend the day there. Once we take over, at least once a week, I take my laptop and I make sure they are okay with that they don't think I'm being extra nosy and snoopy. So we've got to make sure they're okay with that. And that's a conversation I have with them before hiring them. And at the same time, I don't ever give any direct orders, communications, etc., approvals to the on-site people without the regional and the director also agreeing to the same thing. I never say anything that contradicts what we've agreed to on the weekly calls. That's very important. And I tell them ahead of time, hey, I think I'm going to bring lunch for these people. The maintenance is staying late, extra late to take care of all these work orders, etc. So whatever, even little things I do, I keep the property management bosses informed, because we're all one team. You never want to act, even if you have disagreements, you never want to show it to your on-site. So you're a united front. Ownership is working very closely with the powers that be of the PM to make things happen on site. But I like to have my pulse on what's happening. So I'm there at least once a week, even on a regular basis, but especially when you take over.
Fantastic. Thank you. Kathy Tran.
Hi, Sandhya. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. What's your thoughts on the GP team having vertically integrated companies? For example, property management, construction company versus the GP. Yeah.
I think there's both ways to do it. It's a lot of work. So let's say for me, so far, I'm 4 years into this business and all I've ever used is a third-party company. For me to vertically integrate, I would need a whole separate person in my team, in my GP team, to do just that, to have a vertical PM. So that's a whole separate job that would take away from this. So if I tried to do it, it would take away from acquisitions or current asset management, et cetera, activities. So it's a whole huge effort. I think there's a lot of efficiencies in doing that because you can actually directly impact the NOI. They usually do very well. Okay, that's a funny remark, Charles. I agree with that. You can't ever fire your PM because your PM is you, which is really funny and true. I think there's probably a lot more pluses than minuses to it, other than just saying that it's extra work. So if I ever wanted to do that, I think my first bet would be is there a little PM that I can just go and buy because maybe a small percentage ownership so that I can have a say, a little more weight in how it's run rather than me trying to build a company. But yes, some large companies who do that are great, but just look at their fee structure. Closely look at the fee structure in every deal.
Fantastic. All right, Deepak, and our last question for tonight.
Hi, Sandhya. So this is great information. I've been looking for something like this for a while. So Sandhya, I'm a LP. I'm in California, and both of my properties I'm passively invested in are in Texas, and I'm
Okay.
looking to find some properties in Texas myself. But your property management companies that you have for your properties, and if you have outside investors want to come and visit your property, are your PMs aware that sometimes the investor will want to come by and visit the property? Or is there another way to get around without seeming like you're very, how should I say that? Kind of like doing a surprise inspection.
Yeah. So basically, if all you're going to do is a drive-by and it's on a Saturday or a Sunday, that's fine. If you actually want to go in and speak to the property manager and walk units, I frequently do that with my out-of-state investors. So Omar, who was on the call a little bit earlier, maybe he still is, he's from Saudi Arabia. So when he was visiting for Best Ever Conference in Salt Lake, and then he was headed to Houston, I said, you can make a day trip from Houston to Dallas on a Sunday. Let's go see your property. And I actually had the keys for a couple of them. So we were able to go inside the leasing office, et cetera, and see it. So I take them. So I have a lot of posts, if you follow me on LinkedIn or Facebook, where I'm always with investors at properties. I love doing that because I'm going to the property anyway. So might as well take my investor and show them around and say, listen, remember you read this in last month's report? This is exactly what that looks like. So something I'm highly in favor of because I think it builds trust. Because rather than just seeing some numbers on a spreadsheet, if you physically see and walk the property, you're like, oh my gosh, this paint really looks nice, or whatever else that we said we did. You get to verify it. And I do a lot of Facebook Live, so my investors feel like they're actually there, even though they're not physically there.
Great questions, everybody. Thank you, Sandhya. How, if somebody wanted to reach out to you, not to ask you what your cat's name is, but to really have a great conversation and not to waste your time, how would they reach you? How would that be for you?
I think I put my email address in there. I'm often on LinkedIn and Facebook. Both those channels are great. Of course, through you, Julie, and then my website, Engineered Capital, which is engineered-capital.com. And yeah, I do request people to be, respectful of our time. But if you just want to have a random chat, usually when I'm driving, I don't mind doing a chat. But to have a Zoom call at 10 a.m. on a weekday, that's hard, right? Because that's your peak business time. So depending on what the conversation needs to be, it's a little more leisurely at certain times.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for all of the information. I mean, we could go on for hours. You just are a wealth of knowledge and so generous with all of it, both here and on LinkedIn. Everybody, make sure you connect with Sandhya on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and send her a message. Say, I saw you on Zoom at 8, because if she's like me and you're connected to 4 people, I might not put you, I might not accept you.
Yeah, it helps. It really helps because I get so much spam. I probably have like 500 connections waiting to connect because they want to spam me with some product. So it really helps when you say, hey, we were on Zoom at 8 with Julie and I like what you said.
Yeah, so please, Sandhya is so, again, generous with her time. Thank you.